Chapter 1. World Protection. God rewards hard work. Tiando Empire, Phasno Province, Kaomiao Village. A cool mountain breeze whispered through the bamboo, making the leaves shiver and sigh. A wild hare poked its head out of its burrow, sniffed the air cautiously, and bounded out to forage. Peep! Before the hare could react, a soft thud sounded. An arrow shot clean through it. Warm blood darkened the soil along the shaft. Gotcha! Lin Chuan dropped down from the tree, withdrew the arrow, and weighed the rabbit in his hands. Not bad, really fat, about 6 kilograms. Keep some at home, sell the rest at a good price. You performed a serious archery exercise, archery proficiency plun. The little notification was familiar to him. In fact, Lin Chuan wasn't an ordinary child. He was a time traveler. His parents were unknown to him. Villagers said his father had been a soldier of the Tiando Empire who died in battle, and his mother had died in childbirth the day he was born. He'd been raised by an old veteran from the village, a friend of his father. The veteran had returned from the army, maimed and broken, and eventually died when Lin Chuan was 5. The old man's taught skills and hard lessons were what kept the boy comfortable now. When Lin Chuan was 5, a nameless panel had appeared to him, visible only to him. It was nothing flashy, a simple progress tracker that showed skills, experience, and a small blessing. It boiled life down to a practical promise. Work hard, and you would be rewarded. Seeing progress like that had been enough to motivate him every day. Blessing. Heaven rewards hard work, a blessing from the will of the blue star. No matter how hard you work, your effort will be rewarded. Skills. Archery. Basic, 14,000. Spearmanship. Basic, 487,000. Sword skill. Basic, 368 1,000. Boxing. Basic, 533,000. Body skill. Basic, 654 1,000. Almost there. Lin Chuan breathed to himself. My archery is nearly as good as the old hunters in the village. If I break through to the next level, he tucked the rabbit under his arm and hurried toward the village. Today was important. On Douluo Continent, a child's 6th birthday was a turning point. That was the age to have one's martial soul awakened. His parents hadn't been soul masters, so he didn't dare hope for a powerful spirit, but the progress bar had given him reason to try. As he reached the village center, he ran into the headman. Xiaochuan, good timing. Hurry to the Wuhun Hall. The spirit master is here to preside over the awakening. Don't keep him waiting. I understand, headman. Lin Chuan nodded and picked up his pace. The wooden Wuhun Hall was already filled with children of the same age. The village chief was talking with a young man who looked imposing despite his calm face. The old man waved at Lin Chuan. These are the 3 children to be awakened today. Thank you again for coming. The young man bowed slightly. I haven't much time. Let's begin. Lin Chuan's breath caught. The young man introduced himself as Su Yuntao. Rumor called him the blind-eyed king. A soul master with a fearsome reputation, Lin Chuan tried to keep his composure. Lone wolf, possess, Su Yuntao intoned. With a flare of spirit energy, the air seemed to shift. Muscles tense, long gray hair flowing, claws gleaming coldly, the young man's martial spirit manifested as a savage wolf. A faint green light flickered in his eyes. 2 soul rings slowly appeared in the sky above him, one pale and one yellowed. The sight left Lin Chuan quietly impressed. Su Yuntao glanced at him briefly, then refocused on the other 2 children. The first child's spirit manifested as a lump of coarse sand, dull and inert. Stone sand, no soul power, Su Yuntao said flatly. The second revealed a tuft of blue grass. Blue-silver grass, useless, no soul power. The first 2 awakenings were over before they began. The old village chief's face fell, expected, but disappointing. Now it was Lin Chuan's turn. He stepped into the circle of 6 black stones at the center of the hall. Su Yuntao clapped his hands and poured a sliver of spirit power into the stones. Pale golden light rose from the rock and washed over Lin Chuan like a warm current, his chest filled with a gentle heat. Raise your right hand. Lin Chuan obeyed. He felt his hands sink into a vision, a short black bow, plain and unadorned. A weapon spirit, at least it had offensive potential. He hoped, silently, that it would be enough. Su Yuntao reached into his satchel and produced a small crystal orb used to test spirit power. Lin Chuan placed his hand on the orb. He immediately felt a pull, as if his spirit were being measured. His warm current flowed into the orb and the crystal burst into vivid blue light. It actually has level 5 spirit power. Su Yuntao's calm face broke into surprise, then into elation. Level 5 was an exceptional result for a 6-year-old. Little friend, Su Yuntao said, his voice suddenly warm with invitation, would you be willing to join the Spirit Hall? Lin Chuan's heart skipped. To join the Spirit Hall was to enter a path of training and resources no village could provide. I don't know. He hesitated, nervous but steady. May I go home and think about it? Su Yuntao nodded. I won't force you. If you decide later, come to Notting City Spirit Hall and ask for me. Su Yuntao's disappointed sigh betrayed him as he handed Lin Chuan the Wuhun certificate. It's a pity, he murmured. Lin Chuan smiled politely and accepted the certificate. He didn't linger for greetings. He made a quick excuse, breakfast at home, and bolted. Once he reached his cottage, he locked the doors and windows, made sure no one could see, and crawled under his covers. He needed privacy. He needed to be absolutely certain. First time mastering extraordinary power. Initial rewards issued. Congratulations. Obtained magical weapon, Blue Wave Cauldron. Blue Wave Cauldron, spirit refining magical weapon. Can refine the spirit of items to improve their quality. Lin Chuan sat up on his pallet, the light from the panel reflecting in his eyes. He hadn't expected anything like that. A weapon spirit with level 5 power, and now a spirit refining magical tool. The nameless panel's promise, heaven rewards hard work, felt less like a maxim and more like a guarantee. Outside, the bamboo sighed in the breeze. Inside, Lin Chuan tucked his new gifts into his mind and set his jaw. If the world would reward effort, then he would push himself until the progress bar demanded no more. Chapter 2. Gamblers Don't Die Well. It's a spirit-refining magic tool. Lin Chuan's eyes went wide. He couldn't wait to pull the blue-patterned cauldron out. A small bronze tripod, 3-legged with twin handles, appeared before him. Mysterious lines, like runes or ancient script, covered its inner wall, dense and intricate. Even without knowing what it did, he could tell it was no ordinary artifact. Spirit refining, also called spirit strengthening, forced the power of heaven and earth into objects, lending them extraordinary properties. Elixirs, perfumes, even weapons could be spirit refined. Because it robbed natural order to do so, spirit refining was forbidden by heaven and earth. It carried a risk. Success could multiply an object's power, but failure could utterly ruin it. Refined items could even be layered repeatedly. If luck favored you, even a roadside weed might be improved into something capable of cutting stars. Good heavens, this is incredible, Lin Chuan murmured, still reeling. Finding such a treasure after awakening his martial soul was more than he'd hoped for. But excitement was quickly replaced by a prickle of caution. A treasure like this would draw envy from everywhere. If word got out, everyone would want it. He had to keep the blue-patterned cauldron's existence a secret. He also remembered that spirit refining probably required specific flames. Would ordinary campfire do? Practice would answer that. Lin Chuan set the cauldron on the earth and hurried into the woodshed. He came out with a sack of rice and a bundle of kindling. We'll see. He stacked the firewood beneath the cauldron, struck flint to light the tinder, and tucked it under the pile. Soon, the kindling caught, and green-tinged smoke billowed. Lin Chuan's pulse quickened as he took a single grain of rice and dropped it into the cauldron. The runes along the cauldron lit up, throwing off a silvery white glow. The grain spun slowly, now and then bathed in a halo that seeped into it. Lin Chuan fought to keep his composure. After about 15 minutes, the glow ebbed, and the halo faded. Done? He asked. He reached in and lifted the grain up to his eyes. The once ordinary kernel had turned crystal clear, its surface etched with a dazzling silver pattern, the same markings that had lit on the cauldron. Over the next moments, the silver deepened into a dark sheen. This rice, it's infused with the power of heaven and earth. It looked extraordinary, but how effective was it? He took a breath. Time to try it. He cooked the refined rice in an ordinary iron pot in the woodshed. As the rice warmed, the halo leaked out in shimmering wisps, its power bleeding into the air. Lin Chuan didn't hesitate. He opened his mouth and swallowed. The rice dissolved on his tongue and turned into a roaring tide of vitality that surged through his limbs. He had no training in cultivating soul power, no method to absorb raw spirit, So he resorted to the only crude trick he knew, vigorous exercise to force the body to assimilate the energy. Without thinking, he began doing push-ups, each rep consuming and grounding some of the overflow. Sweat beaded on his brow. A faint mist rose from his body. A small notification seemed to pulse through him. You exercised intensely. Your physical fitness has slightly improved. 3 hours later, the mist and the sensations finally faded. Lin Chuan collapsed onto the dirt, breathing hard. It's over. He felt different, charged. Even after that grueling effort, he wasn't exhausted. Energy buzzed through him. Better yet, his perception of his own soul power had shifted. My soul power, it's increased a lot. I'm not far from level 6. Lin Chuan stared at his hands, stunned. The effect had exceeded his expectations. If he'd known how to cultivate properly, if his body could have absorbed all that spirit instead of wasting most of it, the gain would have been enormous. Still, he was satisfied. A dangerous thought surfaced. Could he use the cauldron to refine his martial soul? The temptation to make his own martial spirit stronger was intoxicating, but the risk of failure gnawed at him. If spirit refining failed on a living spirit, heaven and earth's power would destroy the object or his martial soul completely. That would be catastrophic. He forced the idea aside. Not yet. Don't rush into something that could end you. At least wait until you're sure. He could, however, refine weapons safely enough. He pulled the remaining arrows and hatchets from his home and one by one tossed them into the cauldron. The fire flared and the runes ignited again. When the process finished, the arrows were transformed. A silver tracery ran along their shafts, darkening into a metallic sheen. The wooden shafts felt audibly firmer, like iron under the touch, and the iron arrowheads threw back a colder, sharper light. Lin Chuan grinned and put another batch in, repeating the spirit refining. A sudden knock on the door interrupted him. He froze, snatched the blue-patterned cauldron back into his spirit, and smoothed his expression before opening the door. Outside stood the village chief of Kaomiao village, smiling kindly. "Xiao Chuan," the chief said, "I have news. The soul master at the spirit hall asked if you'd be willing to become a soul student. I went to the 2 neighboring villages. No one there qualified this year, so I fought for the work-study quota that the 3 villages share." Lin Chuan blinked, then warmth spread through him. "Thank you, village chief. I'd be honored to go to the soul master school." "Good." The chief's smile widened. "Then the quota will be yours. Notting College registers in half a month. Xiao Chuan, you must study hard and strive to become an excellent soul master." Lin Chuan bowed his head. "I won't let you down." "That's my boy. I believe in you." The village chief straightened. "I'll be off then. Prepare yourself." Without giving Lin Chuan time to speak further, the chief turned and hurried away, muttering with pleased relief, "Finally, the village will have a soul master." Lin Chuan closed the door and stared at the path the chief had taken. His heart buzzed with a new kind of excitement, a chance at formal training, and a powerful, dangerous cauldron in his possession. His life had just taken a sharp turn. He forced himself to be careful. For now, secrets needed keeping and preparations had to be made. Chapter 3. Such a great gift for the first meeting. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Early one morning, Lin Chuan arrived in Notting City in an ox cart. He wasn't a stranger to the place. Back home in Kaomiao village, he had often taken the meat he couldn't eat to Notting's market to sell. Coming to Notting felt almost like returning home. "Uncle, you can drop me here. I'll walk to Notting College from here," Lin Chuan said as he swung down from the cart, shouldering his bedding. "All right then. Take care, Xiao Chuan. Study hard at Notting College, become a powerful soul master, and bring honor to Kaomiao village," the older man replied. "Don't worry." Lin Chuan grinned, exchanged a brief goodbye, and set off toward the college. The route was familiar. He had no fear of any fancy reception or scornful looks from the concierge. When he handed over his martial spirit certificate, the attendant glanced it over and let him through with little fuss. The quiver and hatchet at his waist probably made the man think twice about causing trouble. Registration went smoothly. Uniforms, dorm assignments, and Lin Chuan felt a small flush of relief when he was told his bed was in dormitory 7. He also felt wary. He had secrets he couldn't risk exposing, so he'd have to be careful from now on. Standing outside dorm 7, he could hear noises from inside. He pushed the door open slowly, and a black blur flew at him. Instinctively, he stepped back, and the figure landed where he'd been standing a moment before. Kneeling there was a thin, pale young man. "There's no need to be so formal. Kneeling like that makes things awkward," Lin Chuan said lightly as he moved past him into the room. The kneeling youth's head snapped up, face suddenly livid, eyes cold with displeasure. "You?" he spat. Lin Chuan realized he'd struck the wrong tone, but didn't bother to apologize. He simply smiled and stepped into the dorm. For a moment, every head turned to watch the newcomer. "Also a work-study student, are you?" a round-faced boy who looked older than the others asked. Lin Chuan nodded. "Boss, a newcomer's here. Go tell him the rules of Dorm 7. At that, the girl beside the round boy, dressed in pink, straightened, eyes sparkling. She bounced up and bounded over to Lin Chuan with a bright smile. "Hello, I'm Xiao Wu. Wu like dancing. My martial soul is a rabbit. What's your name?" "Lin Chuan. My martial soul is a bao." He answered quietly and studied her for a moment. She gave off the aura of a rare, ancient soul beast. She seemed every bit 100,000-year spirit rabbit. If that were really her grade, her soul rings and skills would be treasures, perfect for an archer. Unfortunately, those treasures weren't his to take. The circumstances didn't allow him to absorb any soul rings now. He pushed the thought away. Xiao Wu's big eyes blinked, and she flashed a gentle smile. "Then I'll call you Xiao Chuan. I'm the boss of Dorm 7, she continued before he could respond. "You're my little brother now. You must listen to me. Call me Sister Xiao Wu from now on. I'll protect you and won't let anyone bully you." Lin Chuan's expression grew a little awkward, but he shook his head. "Sorry, I'm not interested in playing house. I'm here to study to become a soul master. I don't want to be anyone's boss or anyone's little brother. That's not your decision. It's a Dorm 7 rule." Xiao Wu's tone hardened. "Come on, boss. Teach him the rules," the older boy urged, trying to egg the situation on. Xiao Wu bristled at Lin Chuan's refusal. "Fine. If you won't respect me, I'll teach you by force." Before Lin Chuan could reply, she bent her right leg and launched herself at him. Her kick came like a whip. The tip of her toe was already at his face in a blink. Her speed was startling. He frowned and dodged swiftly. 2 steps back, then another, evading the second and third kicks as she pressed the attack. Xiao Wu's moves were fast and precise, but Lin Chuan stayed calm, sidestepping each blow. When one of her kicks finally clipped through the space he'd occupied, she narrowly missed his clothes by an inch. He didn't retaliate. There was no point in fighting to dominate. If he won, he'd be stuck as the dorm boss's younger brother, picking up chores and favors he didn't want. If he lost, he'd be humiliated. Instead, he treated the exchange as training, letting the rhythm of her attacks sharpen his reflexes. Each dodge honed his movement, and he felt his body grow more fluid, more practiced. Xiao Wu's attacks grew more frantic when they failed to land. "Why don't you fight back?" she demanded, stamping her foot in irritation. Lin Chuan kept dodging, his breathing steady. After a long series of missed attempts, she finally stopped, folding her arms. "Boring. You just hide and dodge. No guts. I'm done playing." He moved toward an empty bed. The others unconsciously made room for him. Just then, a man in his 30s pushed the dorm door and strode in. "New work-study students. Stand up here." Lin Chuan set down his bedding and turned. The man wore a serious expression. "I'm Mo Hen, in charge of dormitory management. The 3 of you are first-year part-time students. From now on, you'll be assigned to clean the garden south of the playground. 10 copper soul coins a day. Be sure to clean every day. If you slack off or are lazy, the school has the right to order your dismissal. Understood?" He looked hard at all 3 of them. They all nodded. "All right, Tang-san, this is the quilt your master left you." Mo Hen handed a thin, tattered quilt to the thin youth who'd been kneeling. "That's the quilt?" Xiao Wu stared, speechless at the ragged thing in Tang-san's hands. The other work-study students quickly grabbed their own quilts and bowed a little in thanks. The quilt in Tang-san's hands was dirty and worn. Xiao Wu's nose wrinkled with disdain. Then, from the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Lin Chuan. Her expression changed instantly. Her dark eyes brightened like a lantern switching on. Chapter 4. Conception of Soul Ring. "Xiao Chuan, can we make a deal?" Xiao Wu approached Lin Chuan, hands behind her back, leaning in with a teasing smile. She narrowed her eyes and batted her lashes. Lin Chuan knew exactly what she was after. "I've got 2 sets prepared for changing," he said flatly. "Oh? Since you have 2, and one of them isn't in use right now, just lend it to me," she coaxed, turning up the charm. A pretty girl's flirtation was hard to resist, but Lin Chuan wasn't interested in babies, no matter how ancient the soul beast. Even 100,000-year-old soul beast would still be a child, and Lin Chuan didn't want the trouble any more than necessary. Still, he could tell Xiao Wu wouldn't give up easily. "Talk properly," he warned, shaking off her hand. Xiao Wu pouted, then brightened. "I'll give you a set of bedding," he continued, "but not for free. You'll help me tend the garden for 2 months. If you agree, you can have it. If not, then forget it." "Ah!" Xiao Wu balked at having to work, but when she saw how serious Lin Chuan was, she could only nod. "All right, it's a deal, sister. You won't go back on your word, right?" Don't worry," she snorted, handing over the bedding and happily setting up her bed again. "It's almost noon. Xiao Wu, Lin Chuan, Tang San, why don't we go eat together?" Wang Sheng suggested. The 3 part-time students who had enrolled this year weren't ordinary. It would be wise to make friends with them. Xiao Wu's ears perked at the mention of food. Then she hesitated. "But do we have to spend soul coins to eat?" "Yeah, Sister Xiao Wu." Wang Sheng trailed off, eyeing the new student. Lin Chuan looked short on money, but for the sake of having a powerful ally, Wang Sheng clenched his teeth and offered to treat everyone. Lin Chuan shook his head. "You guys go ahead. I have something to take care of." "Hey, Lin Chuan." Wang Sheng started, but Lin Chuan had already walked out of the dorm. Wang Sheng and the others exchanged puzzled looks. "Forget it. If Xiao Chuan doesn't want to go, let's not wait." Xiao Wu shrugged and joined the others toward the cafeteria. Lin Chuan, who had eaten a single soul-refining grain the night before and still felt full at noon, headed to Notting College's library instead. He felt his time would be better spent studying than eating. What he needed most now was a method to cultivate soul power. He knew meditation was the way, but he had no teacher and no concrete guidance. You couldn't just close your eyes and hope the world handed you a path. Notting's library wasn't huge, but it had a decent collection. Lin Chuan didn't find any manuals on cultivating soul power, but he did find a volume cataloging common soul beasts. He settled into a corner and began to read, looking over the habits and abilities of different beasts and trying to identify suitable targets for his first soul ring. His martial soul was a bow. Its best growth would be in raw, destructive power, ideally a one-shot kill, something akin to Yang Wudi's soul-breaking spear. The trick was finding a soul beast of the right age and strength. That kind of coincidence was rare. If only soul rings could be passive, he mused, then this would be so much easier. But as he read on, a tentative idea began to form in his head. He was still absorbed in the book when someone came and sat beside him. The movement put him on guard. He looked up. "Freshman this year?" the man asked in a hoarse voice. Lin Chuan nodded. "Yes." "You interested in soul beast lore?" the man continued. "There will be a lot of contact in the future. It's a matter of life and death. It's sensible to know as much as you can," Lin Chuan replied, speaking like someone older than his years. The man's eyes brightened. This kid was different. "What's your martial soul? And what's your innate soul power level?" the man asked bluntly. Lin Chuan paused for a heartbeat, then answered directly. He had a feeling the other could find out either way. "My martial soul is a bow, and my innate soul power is level 5. The man's face fell. "Only level 5? That's a pity," he muttered, then turned away without another word. "Yu Xiaogang?" Lin Chuan guessed to himself. He'd chosen not to hide his details. With Yu Xiaogang's connections, it would be easy enough for him to discover them. The man's brief interest and quick dismissal were a small blessing. His ordinary martial soul and mediocre innate level had seemed to turn Yu away. Even so, Yu's parting remarks stung in its own way. "There are no useless martial souls, only useless soul masters," Lin Chuan said under his breath, a small smile curling his lips. Early the next morning, Lin Chuan dressed in his uniform and sat in the classroom with the freshman cohort. The 3 part-time students were there. Tang San was absent, probably off in the soul-hunting forest with Yu Xiaogang to obtain his first soul ring. A woman in a gray robe pushed open the door and came to the front. She swept her gaze across the students and introduced herself in a calm, confident voice. I'm Irene. I'll be your mentor. I hope we can get along well. She wasted no time. Let's get to our first lesson, how to cultivate soul power through meditation. Irene explained the process carefully. Meditation, she said, was the way to connect to the energies of heaven and earth, draw them into the body, and circulate the soul power within to refine that energy. This steady absorption and refinement was how one accumulated soul power. Lin Chuan listened intently and began to follow her instructions. He focused on his breathing, centered his mind, and tried to sense the subtle currents Irene described. Slowly, tentatively, he felt something respond, the faint, warm circulation of soul power in his chest. He practiced with care. The sensation grew clearer, his soul power rose a little, and he felt his meditation skill improve. For the first time since arriving, Lin Chuan saw a way forward. Chapter 5. Tricking Xiaowu. On the back slope of Nodding College, Lin Chuan sat cross-legged, eyes closed, chest rising and falling in a slow rhythm. With every breath, a thin white mist drifted up from his head. Heat flowed through him, and under his control, his soul power began to circulate, refining the warmth into purer power. Even so, much of the energy still leaked away. You practiced meditation seriously once and gained a little. Your soul power increased slightly, and your meditation proficiency +1. About an hour later, Lin Chuan opened his eyes and exhaled. The absorption efficiency of the soul-refining rice has improved, but I still can't refine it all. It's a shame to lose so much energy. Even with the new meditation technique, the results weren't as dramatic as he'd hoped. He wondered how effective the Xuantian Baolu Tangsan had used might be. But that was Tangsan's path. Tangsan had been trained for this from the start, and he and Lin Chuan hadn't exactly gotten off on the right foot. Lin Chuan pushed the thought aside. Ordinary meditation is ordinary meditation. Progress might be slow for others, but for him, any increase in proficiency meant his practice would accelerate over time. It would just take more work. He was not discouraged. What he lacked most was time. The immediate progress he could see was addictive. He couldn't stop. He had to keep going. Level 7. God rewards hard work. Blessing from the will of the blue star. You reap what you sow. Your efforts will be rewarded. Skills, Soul Power Meditation, LV2, 300. Skills, Archery, 497 1000. Gun Skill Basic, 487,000. Sword Skill Basic, 422 1000. Boxing Basic, 533 hand. Body Skill Basic, 688 1000. With the help of the soul-refining rice, Lin Chuan had already pushed his soul power up 2 levels in just half a month. That rapid rise made him uneasy. His body might not be able to handle a sudden jump, so he was careful to take only a grain now and then. He still couldn't fully absorb all the energy from the rice. If he had, his soul power would probably be higher than level 7. Even so, at this pace, he wouldn't be far from level 10. It wouldn't be instant, though. When Tang San went to the soul-hunting forest for his first soul ring, Tang Dachui had been covertly protecting him. No one watched him the whole time, which had made Lin Chuan bold enough to act. He couldn't afford such risks now. If Tang Dachui ever kept an eye on Nodding College, or even suspected something, it would be dangerous. A 1% chance of disaster was still too big. This isn't a solution, he muttered. I need a plan. He considered finding money and moving out of Nodding College so he could live and practice alone. He had barely formulated the idea when a bright voice called out. Xiao Chuan, I finally found you. Why did you run off to such a remote place? Lin Chuan looked up to find Xiao Wu racing toward him, quick as ever. He'd tried to hide, but she'd found him anyway. He couldn't help a rueful smile at the clingy girl. What are you doing here? Tang San isn't around, and Wang Sheng and the others are boring, so I came to play with you. Xiao Wu planted her hands on her hips and stared. Her cheeks puffed a little. Do you not want me to? I do want you, but I don't have time to play. I have to practice my soul power. Lin Chuan's tone was weary. He truly had no time. All you ever do is practice. What else is there? He asked, quieter. Then softer, he added, Xiao Wu, why do you want to become a soul master? She froze. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Her eyes reddened, and she bit her lip. My mother was killed by someone very powerful. I came to Notting College to study so I could become strong enough to kill that person and avenge her." Her words were light, but the resolve behind them was iron. Lin Chuan knew exactly whom she meant, but he kept quiet and spoke his own truth. "I became a soul master so I could control my own fate." "You've got a blood debt," he went on, "but I don't see any real urge for revenge in you. You said yourself you were born with full soul power, a talent countless people would kill for. If I were you, I wouldn't squander that. I don't know who your enemy is, but she must be getting stronger every day while you stand still. If you keep wasting time, you'll never be ready to take revenge. Do you understand?" Xiao Wu's face went pale. Lin Chuan's words hit home. She had transformed and risked everything to come to the human world to get stronger and settle the score, yet since arriving, she'd been distracted by the human world's colors and comforts. She hadn't trained seriously for days. Realization snapped her awake. "Xiao Chuan, you're right. I'll train harder. I'll work to avenge my mother as soon as possible," she declared. "Good. Don't waste your talent." Lin Chuan smiled as he watched her resolve. He had deliberately pushed her buttons. Her dedication was vulnerable, and she'd fallen for it. Xiao Wu's instincts and impulsiveness were part of why she was a 100,000-year soul beast in the first place. Her talent was 1 in a million. Yet in 6 years, she'd only managed to reach level 19. She lacked a true sense of urgency and seemed to have set aside her hatred, which was unreasonable. If she could be nudged back onto the right path, her future could be very promising. There were other thoughts at the back of Lin Chuan's mind. 100,000-year soul beast could yield invaluable treasures, soul rings, soul bones, items others would kill for. If the chance presented itself, he could profit. Even if it didn't, it was just a possibility. Ultimately, his confidence rested on himself. Even without a legendary soul ring or bone, he believed he could outmatch most people. For now, he would keep working, and he'd keep an eye on opportunities. Chapter 6. Children's Competitive Spirit. After Lin Chuan's gentle persuasion, Xiao Wu really had changed. The little girl was no longer as flighty as before. Even at night in the dormitory, she would be found meditating instead of sleeping. This was the sort of discipline an Avenger should have. Still, things hadn't gone entirely the way Lin Chuan expected. Xiao Wu had become much more diligent, but she still followed him everywhere. She sat next to him in class, shadowed him in their free time, and even trailed him out to the college's back mountain when he went to train. She seemed to enjoy it. Lin Chuan felt a little helpless, but as long as she didn't disturb his practice, he let her be. Whoosh! An arrow blurred into a black streak and struck the straw target hanging from the treetop. A small notification flickered through Lin Chuan's mind. "You have practiced archery seriously and gained a little. Archery proficiency +1. He ignored the message and nocked another arrow, stringing and drawing the bow in a steady rhythm. Not every shot found the mark. The breeze made the straw target sway unpredictably, and under those conditions, hitting it wasn't easy. Lin Chuan guessed he would need to break through to the next level of archery before he could land hits consistently. Yet beyond that, the demands on his perception would only grow. Against a fast opponent, merely aiming wouldn't be enough. He'd have to detect and predict movement. "Tsk," he muttered, still a long way to go. He was painfully aware of his shortcomings, but for now there seemed to be no easy fix. Tang San's purple demon pupil was exceptional, but it was impossible for Lin Chuan to obtain, an almost unattainable ability from another person. Still, he was determined that the problem would be solved sooner or later. He closed his eyes and thought hard. Is there a way to detect someone's exact position, maybe even predict their movement? Wait, detect breath, predict movement? His eyes snapped open. An idea flashed into his mind that fit perfectly. Observation hockey. In One Piece, hockey sharpened the senses, allowing a user to sense the presence and emotional state of others, even anticipate attacks. It was similar in effect to a divine consciousness, though it couldn't map terrain. Its range could be broad, and when cultivated, it could develop into something like hearing the voices of all things or even glimpsing the future. In some great worlds, it even bordered on the laws of time. The crucial thing was that Lin Chuan actually knew how to practice observation hockey. As one of the 3 forms of hockey, It was a latent power in all humans in that world, though not every world's rules allowed its use. That restriction didn't apply to Lin Chuan. He possessed the strange boon of God's reward for hard work. If he put in the effort, the gods rewarded him. Now that he knew the method, he could master even powers from other worlds through that blessing. Hiss. This could work, he breathed. If I can actually do this, it'll change everything. He stifled his excitement and planned to try, but observation hockey required a partner for practice. Lin Chuan turned and looked toward Xiao Wu. She was a ready-made volunteer. He couldn't have asked for better. Xiao Chuan, why are you staring at me like that? Her senses were sharp. After all, she was a 100,000-year-old soul beast in human guise, and she noticed immediately. Lin Chuan gave a small laugh. Don't worry, I just want you to do me a favor. Oh, her eyes lit up. You finally fell into my hands. Tell me. He was about to outline the exercise when a faint sound drifted over the ridge, noisy footsteps and shouted voices. A crowd was approaching. Someone's coming, Lin Chuan said. We'll talk later. Okay. Xiao Wu nodded. A group of students soon came into view. They were all in the uniform of Nodding Junior Soul Master Academy. One of them, taller than the rest, carried himself with a swagger that didn't fit his age. Contempt and arrogance hung about him like a scent. The other faces, though, were familiar. Wang Sheng from Dormitory 7 and some of the dorm's part-time students. Wang Sheng and others. Why are you all out back here? Xiao Wu asked, puzzled. Lin Chuan narrowed his eyes but said nothing, already guessing the situation. Sister Xiao Wu, Lin Chuan, I finally found you, Wang Sheng called, relief and excitement showing on his face. The others from the 7th dormitory wore similar expressions. Before Wang Sheng could explain, the tall student stepped forward and sneered. Are you the boss of this ragtag little group? He mocked. You actually call that a boss? One of his cronies jeered. How pathetic. You're all part-time students. Trash. She's cute, but if she fought, I doubt she'd withstand even one of my slaps. Boss Xiao's right, another echoed. Work-study students are a joke. Xiao Wu's expression hardened instantly. She understood immediately what they meant. Are you here to pick a fight? She asked, voice cool. I'm Boss Xiao, the tall student announced, tone dripping with disdain. From now on, you lot in Dormitory 7 answer to me. Xiao Wu puffed out her cheeks and looked at him with open contempt. Bah, you wish. You should listen to Sister Xiao Wu. You country bumpkins don't even know your place, Boss Xiao sneered, and then smiled maliciously. Here's how we'll settle this. You work-study students send people to fight us. If you lose, you recognize me as boss. That's easy, Xiao Wu shot back. If you lose, I'll be the boss. Everyone will call me Sister Xiao Wu. The offer was precisely the sort of spectacle she loved, showing off and protecting her own, and she couldn't resist. How are we fighting? She asked. It's simple, Boss Xiao said magnanimously. 10 from your side versus 10 from ours. They fight one-on-one. Winners keep fighting until one side is wiped out. Fair, right? Fair, my foot. Wang Sheng spat at the side. He knew Boss Xiao and his crew were loaded and well-prepared, enrolled early, with stronger resources. The work-study students, by contrast, were few and already stretched thin. Being forced into a round-robin like this was a shameless abuse. Xiao Wu's eyes flashed with determination. She loved a good challenge, and she adored being a big sister figure. She would accept the fight, no backing down now. Chapter 7, Beating Up the Kid. Wang Sheng, this isn't your business. Get out of the way. Boss Xiao sneered at Wang Sheng, then turned to Xiao Wu with a mocking smile. Little girl, if you're scared, just admit it. All right then, Xiao Wu snapped, unable to stand the taunt. Boss Xiao's grin widened. So easy to rile up. This girl was an easy mark. Good, though you're a girl, you've got more guts than Wang Sheng and his bunch of trash. Shut up, who's going first? Xiao Wu grew impatient and waved him off. Liu Long, you go. Boss Xiao pointed, and a tall senior stepped forward. Sister Xiao Wu, I'll go first. Wang Sheng clenched his teeth. Liu Long was his classmate and old rival. They'd fought before, and Wang Sheng had never won. Still, there were only a few people available on the part-timers' side. Xiao Wu couldn't face 10 by herself. Even knowing he'd probably lose, he started to step forward. No, I've got someone else. Xiao Wu played big sister, brushing Wang Sheng aside and turning to Lin Chuan. Xiao Chuan, why don't you go? Lin Chuan curled his lip. I don't care for kids' games. His tone was loud enough for everyone to hear. The other part-timers fell silent, their expressions cooled. Oh, Xiao Chuan, you're one of our part-timers too. Can you really stand by while we get bullied? Xiao Wu's patience thinned. She rolled her eyes, then smiled suddenly. How about this? Didn't you ask me for a favor before? As long as you take part in this fight, I'll help you. Deal? Lin Chuan's eyes flickered. After a moment, he relaxed his folded arms. Deal. But it's not just you. If I need help later, others will too. No problem. I promise them. Xiao Wu said, pleased. Lin Chuan's agreement didn't move her. She'd already suspected she could maneuver him. Lin Chuan didn't care about flattery. This was just an exchange. He pushed through the crowd to the center, drew a hatchet from his waist, and leveled a cold look at the challengers. Begin. Heh, that's your martial soul? A farming tool? Lu Long sneered. I thought you were impressive. Turns out you're all talk. A hatchet? That'll be enough to beat you. Then let me teach you a lesson, Lu Long returned, grim. Yellow light glinted in his palm, and in an instant, a staff over 2 meters long materialized. He rushed forward, raised it high, and brought it down toward Lin Chuan with a powerful arc. Lin Chuan moved with the hatchet, stepping lightly. He sidestepped as the staff came down, never halting. Not over yet, Lu Long shouted and swung across, sweeping the staff. Lin Chuan hopped, flipped midair, and danced around the sweep. As he landed, he was already in front of Lu Long. Oh no, Lu Long's expression soured. He pulled back, but a sharp pain flared in his hand. The hatchet had struck the back of it. His fingers loosened, and the long staff clattered to the ground. Facing Lin Chuan's steady gaze, he froze, throat tightening. I give up. You win, he blurted. The fight was over in a flash. Boss Xiao stared, stunned. This wasn't how he'd expected things to go. Well done, Xiao Chuan. Xiao Wu erupted into cheers from the crowd, voices rising like rival factions cheering their champion. Ling Feng, you go, Boss Xiao called, dispatching another fighter. Be careful, Ling Feng warned his teammates, still shaken by the quick defeat. But Lin Chuan stood casually, hatchet in hand. Ling Feng leapt into the air, arms out like wings, gliding several meters with practiced grace. In a blink, he was upon Lin Chuan. Finally, Lin Chuan moved. With a brutal swing, using the back of the hatchet, he struck Ling Feng squarely across the jaw and side of the face. Ling Feng fell from midair, tumbling several meters before slamming into a tree and going unconscious. Next, Lin Chuan said. Everyone on Boss Xiao's side stared, disbelief widening their eyes. Even the part-timers who weren't involved felt the ground shift. This was the first time they'd seen Lin Chuan really fight, and it had all been over in 2 moves. The one-move defeats were uncanny. More puzzling was the weapon. When Lin Chuan first arrived at the dorm, he'd claimed his martial soul was a bow, not a hatchet. Yet here he was, fighting without any evident soul ability, just raw, efficient violence. Wang Sheng couldn't contain himself. Riding the momentum, he taunted, How about it, Xiao? Admit it, you're outclassed. No matter how many of you come, you can't handle Brother Lin. Our Xiao Wu hasn't even started. Better surrender now. Boss Xiao's face darkened. 2 of his best were down, and his men's confidence had visibly crumbled. He had no choice but to take the field himself. Xiao Chenyu, grade 6. Show them what you've got. A wave of green light flared. Xiao Chenyu's eyes glowed emerald. His hands elongated into wolf-like claws, sharp and glinting. A white soul ring appeared beneath him, flickering like a halo at his feet. Stop the talk and do it, Lin Chuan said. The rules of the soul world didn't interest him. He hadn't come to spar politely. He came to end the disturbance and get what he needed. Whether they were soul warriors or soul masters made no difference to him. Xiao Chenyu didn't waste words. He murmured once and leapt forward, wolf claws flashing as he aimed straight for Lin Chuan's chest. Chapter 8. Self-Abuse Training. Xiao Chenyu charged with full force. The difference between having a soul ring and not having one was painfully obvious. Lin Chuan hefted his hatchet and met Xiao Chenyu's claws head-on. How can a simple hatchet stand against Boss Xiao? Snarked Xiao Chenyu's cronies, grinning confidently. Their smiles froze the moment contact was made. In the blink of an eye, there was a muffled boom. Light flared and a shockwave rolled outward, throwing several nearby students off balance. The force should have swept Lin Chuan away, yet he stood his ground. Soul power-wise, Xiao Chenyu was stronger, no question, But fights weren't decided by soul power alone. After more than a year of training, Lin Chuan's body had been honed into a weapon. He might not have a soul ring, and he didn't look particularly muscular, but his strength was more than enough to handle a first-ring soul master. How is this possible? What level of soul power do you have? Xiao Chenyu blurted, baffled and angry. Lin Chuan didn't answer the question. He simply said, "My turn." He surged forward, the sudden exertion of force jolting Xiao Chenyu off balance. While the wolf spirit's footing wobbled, Lin Chuan kicked, then swung the hatchet with a deceptively gentle snap. Xiao Chenyu staggered, and before he could recover, he struck with a claw, only to be met by the back of Lin Chuan's hatchet. The impact hit Xiao Chenyu's center of gravity and sent him reeling. Lin Chuan followed through with another precise blow. The familiar rhythm of the strike landed cleanly, the blow connected hard, and Xiao Chenyu flew backward. "Boss!" The cronies shouted and rushed forward. Xiao Chenyu struggled to his feet, face contorted with pain. His left cheek was already bruised and swollen, and the humiliation showed in his eyes. Lin Chuan didn't press the attack. He looked at Xiao Chenyu coolly and said, "If I'd used the blade just now, your head would have come off." Those words made Xiao Chenyu's whole body tremble. He finally swallowed his pride and muttered, "You win." The words seemed to cost him everything. The work-study students, led by Wang Sheng, erupted in cheers. After years of being bullied, they finally had something to celebrate. Xiao Wu came up to Lin Chuan, beaming, and slapped his shoulder. "Nice work, Okawa. Don't forget what you promised." "I won't," Lin Chuan said, amused by her overly sisterly manner. Xiao Wu set about handling the aftermath. Lin Chuan strapped the hatchet back to his waist and turned away from the mountain behind the academy. From the corner of his eye, he saw someone familiar return. Tang San. Tang San looked different. He had a new air about him. Lin Chuan guessed Tang San had awakened his first soul ring too, which likely meant Tang Dachui would be back with him. That would warrant keeping an eye on his own cultivation. "Being tied down like this is irritating," Lin Chuan muttered under his breath. The truth was, he still felt too weak. Too many things remained hidden. If he were invincible, he wouldn't have to care. He sighed inwardly and turned his attention away. Tang San had watched the fight with narrowed eyes, astonished. Xiao Chenyu was a first-level soul master. Even with only a 10-year soul ring, he should have been far stronger than Lin Chuan. Yet he had been beaten so easily by a boy wielding an ordinary hatchet, and who hadn't even awakened a martial spirit. This guy isn't simple, Tang San thought, impressed. Still, he wasn't foolish enough to be intimidated. "I'll find the time to teach him a lesson," he resolved. Tang San's mind began turning over ways to do just that. Lin Chuan didn't know Tang San was plotting. Even if he did, he likely wouldn't care much. Hidden weapons and tricks were frightening, but not decisive. As long as Tang Dachui stayed out of it, the outcome wouldn't be certain. And give Lin Chuan another year of training, he wouldn't fear hidden weapons. Word of Xiao Chenyu's defeat spread quickly through Notting College. With Xiao Wu assuming leadership among the work-study students, their fortunes changed overnight. The work-study group finally had someone to defend them. They were no longer the easy target. Xiao Wu and her followers began to squeeze Xiao Chenyu and his cronies. No more cleaning duty for the work-study students, and they even took back the wages the bullies had been pocketing. Lin Chuan accepted this turn of events without complaint. If he didn't have to waste time on chores, he could use every extra minute to train. A few days later, on a quiet slope behind the college, Lin Chuan stood with a strip of black cloth in his hand. Xiao Wu stood opposite him, holding a slim wooden stick, her expression skeptical. "Are you sure you want me to do this?" she asked. "Do it," Lin Chuan replied. "Don't hit the vital points, and don't use full strength, about a third. I'm not blaming you." Xiao Wu still looked puzzled. She had never seen anyone ask to be hit deliberately, and the idea struck her as odd. But she trusted Lin Chuan and agreed. "Okay, let's start." Lin Chuan tied the black cloth over his eyes, then relaxed his stance. "Do your best." Xiao Wu gripped the stick and moved silently around him. Then, with a sudden strike, the stick landed on Lin Chuan's shoulder. Ouch! He bit back the pain. With his vision gone, he couldn't dodge. "Again!" She struck again, unexpectedly. "Hiss!" "Again!" she hissed, following his prompt. "Boom!" "Again!" Boom. Again. Boom. For a long stretch of time, long enough for anyone observing to think she was beating him raw, Xiao Wu kept coming at him with repeated, measured blows. Lin Chuan's body filled with stinging bruises. He grinned through the pain, and then, as his endurance reached a new threshold, something changed inside him. You worked hard to sense the attacks. Your sensory acuity has slightly improved. Perception attributes, color recognition, presence, and knowledge have each increased by 1. Lin Chuan's grin widened despite the aches. Again, he shouted. Chapter 9, Star Forest. Lin Chuan, Level 16. Blessing. God rewards hard work. A blessing from the will of the blue star. You reap what you sow. Your efforts will be rewarded. Skills. Soul Power Meditation LV3. 2000. Skills. Archery Subtlety. 321,000. Gun Skill Basic. 531,000. Sword Skill Subtlety. 475. Boxing Basic. 533,000. Body Skill Subtlety. 133,000. Observation Hockey LV1. 334,000. A year had slipped by almost unnoticed. At Notting Junior College, a semester lasted a year, and students were not allowed to go home in that time. Relatives could visit the campus, but they were not permitted inside the college grounds. During that year, Lin Chuan trained relentlessly. His soul power had already been raised to level 10 for some time, but he hadn't rushed to hunt for soul rings. It was too dangerous to go alone, and there was no one he trusted to help. Even without soul rings, his soul power continued to grow, so there was no need to hurry. Now, after a year of hard work, the results were unmistakable. He had broken through across multiple fields. Archery, swordplay, and his body techniques had advanced to the next stage. He'd also awakened observation hockey. He could feel life breaths within a kilometer, as if a veil had been lifted. Most importantly, his soul power had climbed from level 7 to level 16 in a single year. Such a leap would make waves if anyone found out. In some circles, he might even be taken apart for study. Fortunately, Lin Chuan had kept a low profile, and no one knew the full extent of his progress. But it was time to hunt for soul rings. The next morning, his dormmates were quietly packing. Xiao Wu noticed and asked, curious, "Xiao Chuan, tomorrow's a holiday. Are you going home?" Lin Chuan shook his head. "I'm going to stay and train. I probably won't go home this time." Xiao Wu's face brightened. "That's great." He gave her a wry look. "What's so great about it?" She put her hands on her hips and looked scandalized, but in a childish way. "Wang Sheng and Xiao Chenyu are taking their intermediate Soul Master exam, and most everyone else is going home. If you left too, I'd be stuck alone at school. So boring. Lucky for me, you're still here." Lin Chuan rolled his eyes but didn't argue. "I'm not staying to entertain you. I'm behind and need to use the time to train." "Got it. I won't bother you," she said, waving him off. Xiao Wu always acted like the boss and rarely showed fear. At least Lin Chuan's earlier words had some effect. She'd been training seriously and improving steadily, although not in exactly the direction he'd imagined. Still, their relationship had grown closer, for better or worse. Just then, a familiar presence vanished from within the radius of Lin Chuan's perception. He curled his lips. Tsk, Tang Da Choi must have been eavesdropping again. Tang was always lurking nearby, too close to Xiao Wu for comfort. If it kept up, something would happen. Lin Chuan resolved to seize any chance to slip away. Early the next morning, the campus emptied. Students left one after another. Dormitory 7 was left with only Lin Chuan and Xiao Wu. For 2 days, Lin Chuan stayed and trained inside the college. He even slipped out a few times to pretend he was wandering, while Wensei Chi, his constant sentinel, kept feeling the surroundings. When the familiar presence truly disappeared, he made his move. He rented a carriage and left Notting City quietly. The trip was uneventful, and he allowed himself a small sigh of relief, until a familiar aura suddenly raced over and stopped the carriage. "That pest Tang Dachui again," Lin Chuan muttered under his breath as he lifted the curtain. "Xiao Wu, what are you doing here?" Xiao Wu snorted. "Humph, if I hadn't come, you'd have run off. You promised to stay at the academy and then sneaked away. That's mean. If I hadn't been smart, I'd have let you go." "I'm going to hunt souls. I'll come back when I succeed." "Doesn't matter. I'm going with you." Before he could protest, she leapt onto the carriage with the air of someone pestering for attention. Lin Chuan hesitated a moment, then nodded. Fine, get in. Great, she cheered and scrambled aboard. She lay at the window, eyes glittering at the passing scenery. Where are we going to hunt souls? Probably the Douluo Great Forest, Lin Chuan said. I don't have a spirit hall warrant, so I can't get into the soul-hunting forest. The Sunset Forest is too close to Tiando City. If anything happens there, titled Douluo could be a problem. Douluo is safer. That was his plan. Head to the Douluo Great Forest. Xiao Wu's face lit up. Douluo? Sounds perfect. I've never been there. I mean, not for a long time. I heard it's full of soul beasts. I want to see them. She almost slipped and said more than she intended. Lin Chuan caught the hesitation and suppressed a smile. The carriage ride was bumpy, new experience for both of them. It took about 10 days to reach their destination. The Douluo Great Forest, one of the 3 most famous soul beast gathering grounds on the Douluo Continent, was vast. Its land area rivaled that of the Barak Kingdom and straddled the border between the Tiando Empire and the Xingluo Empire, roughly 2/5 in Tiando and 3/5 in Xingluo, which is how it earned the name Douluo. It was a primeval wilderness of layered terrain, wetlands, and swamps. Packed with soul beasts of countless kinds, it had become a crossroads for soul masters across the continent. Lin Chuan jumped down from the carriage first and scanned the area. His observation hockey threw back steady feedback. A mile away, the air was thick with powerful auras, a mixed crowd of both good and bad influences. Nothing like the quiet of Nodding City. That bustle marked the market outside the Douluo Great Forest, but he deliberately kept his distance. Come on, let's go in, Xiao Wu urged, clearly excited to be home. They skirted the market and headed into the forest. Lin Chuan's vigilance hardened with every step. Unlike the man-made, enclosed soul-hunting forests, the Douluo Great Forest was wild and unforgiving. Even in the outer zones, there could be thousand-year soul beasts. A mere ordinary thousand-year soul beast had power comparable to a 3-ring soul master. Worse, many soul beasts lived and hunted socially. Straying into the territory of a group could be a fatal mistake. They pushed deeper into the trees, both eager and wary. The hunt had begun. Chapter 10, King of the Earth. The Xingluo Great Forest bristled with danger, but it had one irresistible advantage: soul beasts in abundance. Any soul master with enough strength and a little luck could come away with a soul ring that suited them. That was why Lin Chuan had chosen this place. They pushed into the forest and were swallowed by foliage. 10-foot-high weeds carpeted the ground, and the trees towered so densely that the sky was all but blocked. Shadowed branches choked the light and made the undergrowth a perfect hiding place for predators. It felt like stepping into a haunted house, a thrill and a risk at once. There isn't even a trail. Walking this is a pain, Lin Chuan murmured. He drew the hatchet at his waist and began to hack a path forward. The thick canopy made it impossible to see more than a few dozen meters. Without knowing what might lurk beyond the next curtain of leaves, most people wouldn't have dared to come here alone. Fortunately, Lin Chuan had mastered the domineering observation, a sight that let him pick out targets instantly. Without it, he wouldn't have been here. Even the outer reaches of the Xingluo Great Forest held no fewer than 100 soul beasts, most in the 100-year class. They weren't what Lin Chuan needed, though, so he skirted them. After half an hour of careful travel, Xiao Wu finally lost patience. Xiao Chuan, what kind of soul beast are you looking for? She asked. Fire attribute. Other attributes are fine too, Lin Chuan replied softly, never easing his vigilance. He had thought long about his choice. Compared to powerful soul skills, he favored elemental soul skills. Elemental power meshed well with archery. In his ideal, one soul skill could dominate all elemental variations, but beasts capable of granting such skills were rare. The Silver Dragon King, for example, was out of reach. Fire types? There should be a lot of those around, Xiao Wu muttered. Lin Chuan signaled her to be quiet, and they crept forward. Suddenly, he stiffened, raised his hand as a warning, and darted ahead like a gust of wind. Wait for me, Xiao Wu hissed, following. They slipped through the brush until Lin Chuan halted behind a massive trunk and peered around it. A huge scorpion filled his vision. Its carapace was a deep, fiery red, joints shimmered with a murderous gleam. The segmented tail arched over its back, ending in a hooked barb that seemed forged from flame. It was a fire attribute soul beast, and a high-grade one at that. The intense red of its shell told him the beast was well beyond a mere 100 years. The tailbone indicated an age of at least 500 years. A king of the earth, Lin Chuan breathed. It fit his needs perfectly, but he weighed his options. Older soul rings demanded stronger physical fitness to absorb. This year, his soul force and skills had improved, and his body was at least twice the fitness of other soul masters at his level. Still, he'd never tried absorbing a ring of this level. Uncertainty gnawed at him. Xiao Chuan, are you planning on attacking that Earth King? Xiao Wu's voice was low and urgent. She sounded worried. Even though most of the beasts here are in the 100-year class, this one is fierce. It's not something we can overwhelm. Lin Chuan hesitated, thinking it through. Finally, he made up his mind. No more looking around. This is the one. A more than 500-year Earth King would make an excellent first soul ring. He might not find another beast this suitable later, and within a kilometer there was no other soul beast. The clearing was a perfect, undisturbed battleground. That meant no surprises from other beasts, and no risk while trying to absorb the ring. The only condition was to finish the fight quickly. Are you sure? Xiao Wu tried once more to sway him. This thing's strength alone is probably equivalent to a second-ring Great Soul Master, and it has innate abilities. It fights up close. We'd be at a disadvantage. I don't plan to fight it up close. Lin Chuan smiled. I'll shoot it from range. You cover the perimeter and watch for other beasts. His calm choice and the way he put it reassured her. Okay, but be careful. If we can't win, we run. As long as we're alive, there'll be other chances. I won't gamble with my life, he replied, grinning, confidence steady in his eyes. Xiao Wu leapt into a nearby tree to keep watch. Lin Chuan lowered his head and studied the Earth King. With that thick shell, ordinary wolves or snakes couldn't break through, but every armor has a weakness. The beast's small, beady eyes were obvious vulnerabilities. Soul force surged through him, and a short bow coalesced in his left hand. He plucked an arrow from the quiver at his back, drew the bow, and threaded soul energy into the shaft. The runes carved along the arrowhead glowed faintly. The arrow sang through the air. It found the Earth King's eye with deadly precision, burying itself in the socket. The scorpion's massive head thumped against the ground from the impact. It howled in pain and lashed out with its front claws, agony sending it into a blind fury. Lin Chuan didn't pause. He drew another arrow and let it fly. The second shot slid into the other eye. In 2 breaths, the Earth King had been rendered blind. It all unfolded the way Lin Chuan had planned. Chapter 11. Absorbing the 100-year Spirit Ring. At its lowest level, archery is all about precision, endless attention to detail, perfect control, the unity of archer and bow. To put it plainly, Lin Chuan could now place an arrow dead center at 50 meters. With a little more soul power, that effective range could push toward 80. For a 6-year-old, that was nothing short of remarkable. Add to that the once refined arrows and multiple blessings, and their lethality could not be underestimated. The King of Earth writhed and howled in agony. The pain pushed the giant scorpion into a feral rage. It lashed out, flinging grass and branches into the air. Lin Chuan vaulted onto a large tree and deliberately put distance between them. He knew this behavior. This was the King of Earth's death frenzy. To engage it now would be suicide. Red light burst from the creature's body. The air within several meters warped, the ground cracked, and the temperature climbed at an alarming rate. Here it comes, Lin Chuan called softly. The King of Earth slammed its massive pincers into the ground. A shockwave tore outwards, and a column of crimson flame shot into the sky. It was indiscriminate destruction, pure, blinding fury. Lin Chuan watched, a wry breath escaping him. If he'd been caught inside that blast, he'd be cooked. Had he not used a stealth strike to blind the beast and take its sight, this scorpion might have been too dangerous to face head-on. Winning would have been possible, but costly. Now, keeping distance and letting it exhaust itself was far safer. The 2 arrows he'd shot earlier had done more than blind. They had pierced into the brain. Even with the scorpion's tenacious vitality, it wouldn't last much longer. Lin Chuan waited calmly as the creature poured out its remaining energy in an uncontrolled conflagration. The intense magma-like heat kept other spirit beasts away. No other soul masters seemed to notice what was happening here. After the agitation lasted what felt like the length of an incense stick, the King of Earth finally collapsed with a heavy thud, spent. Even then, though its strength was gone, a faint breath remained. "It's finally over," Lin Chuan said. He stepped down from the treetop and approached the corpse. The air still shimmered with heat, smoke billowed, and the lowland brush smoldered. The creature's destructive power had already set the mountain aflame, but with several water attribute spirit beasts nearby, the fire shouldn't spread too far. "Let me finish this," Lin Chuan announced. He drew a final arrow, released it with full force, and the shaft pierced the scorpion's shell, ending it for good. Pale yellow motes began to rise from the corpse, coalescing into a glowing golden halo above the beast. The light was blinding. "Xiao Chuan, did you succeed?" Xiao Wu leapt to his side, eyes wide with shock. That a century-old king of Earth had been felled so decisively by a 10th-level soul warrior surprised her. The calm, methodical way he fought only made her skin crawl with awe and a little fear. The king of Earth was bound to be feared even by many spirit beasts. It wasn't commonly liked. So Xiao Wu's trepidation had nothing to do with jealousy, only concern. "I was lucky. It was easier than I expected," Lin Chuan said with a small smile. He walked to the corpse. The flames still licked around the clearing, making sweat bead on his forehead, but they were receding outward. "It's so hot," Xiao Wu complained after only a moment close to the heat, wiping her brow. Lin Chuan said, "I'm going to absorb the spirit ring now. Help me guard the laws." He sounded serious. Xiao Wu hesitated, but she nodded. "You have my protection, Xiao Chuan. Absorb it quickly." Even in her worry, she stepped forward with a resolute expression. Lin Chuan didn't waste time. The Stardew Forest was unpredictable. There could be spirit beasts far older or stronger than this one nearby, so caution was necessary. He sat cross-legged, and the black shortbow floated into his hand. As his soul power drew on it, the 100-year spirit ring, the golden halo, drifted toward him, and an invisible pressure fell across his chest. When the halo settled on the black bow, a scalding surge of energy poured into Lin Chuan's right hand and raced through his body. It felt like being submerged in molten fire. He immediately began to meditate, forcing the searing energy into order. Each moment of concentrated meditation refined a little of the heat. System prompt: if you meditate earnestly and benefit, your soul power will increase slightly, and your soul power meditation proficiency +1. Pain assaulted him, but the soul meditation technique he had reached at the 3rd level was efficient and strong. He urged the flow of soul power to circulate, swallowing the foreign energy instead of being consumed by it. The agony was intense, but gradually it began to stabilize rather than destroy him. In his mind, he could almost feel his meditation proficiency ticking upward with each breath. Xiao Wu watched anxiously as his face flushed crimson. At first, her fear grew, but when Lin Chuan's condition steadied, no longer worsening, she relaxed a fraction. Suddenly, heavy footsteps sounded nearby. The ground trembled beneath them. "What's that?" Xiao Wu asked, not alarmed so much as surprised. A towering titan ape stepped out from the trees. "Sister Xiao Wu, you're back," he said with a grin, until his eyes fell on Lin Chuan. The joy drained from his face and hardened into hostility. "A human soul master? You hunted spirit beasts? I'll kill you." Before anyone could speak, the ape rearoused its massive palm, preparing to crush Lin Chuan. "Stop, Ming. He's my friend." Xiao Wu shouted, leaping between them just in time to block the blow. Lin Chuan slowly opened his eyes. He was still gathering the last of the ring's energy, feeling wearied but far stronger than moments before. He met the ape's glare without flinching. The clearing held its breath as ally and tension collided, and a new conflict began to stir from the embers of the old. Chapter 12, First Soul Skill, Explosive Arrow. When Xiao Wu spoke, the Titan giant ape shook his massive head, a look of innocent worry in his lantern-sized eyes. "Sister Xiao Wu, that human might have seen me." Xiao Wu hesitated for a moment, then waved it off. "It's fine." Xiao Chuan was completely focused on absorbing the soul ring. He couldn't sense anything outside. "My identity won't be revealed." She turned to the ape and scolded gently. Ming, you're too impulsive. Next time you sense my presence, observe from a distance first. If you rush over like that and there are other people around, it would be very dangerous." The Titan giant ape nodded earnestly, his expression simple and sincere. Erming, is Deming okay? Xiao Wu asked. Deming and I are fine, Erming replied, still worried. After all, there aren't many soul beasts in the forest that can challenge us. But Sister Xiao Wu, it's too dangerous for you to stay alone in the human world. Xiao Wu's jaw tightened. I know, but I must avenge my mother. Sadness and hatred flickered across her face. That woman was already a titled Douluo a few years ago. By now, her strength has probably improved. Xiao Wu alone may not be able to defeat her. The Titan giant ape let out a low, worried growl. With that woman accompanied by 2 other titled Doulos, her status was obviously extraordinary. 3 titled Doulos would be overwhelming for Xiao Wu on her own. Even so, I won't give up, Xiao Wu said stubbornly. Since she had chosen the path of transformation, she couldn't turn back halfway. Her thoughts flickered. She looked at Lin Chuan, still flushed from the absorption, and then back to herself. I used to think Tang San, born with full soul power, was an extraordinary human prodigy, but looking at this boy now, he might be even more remarkable. If I could get other help, maybe. Her eyes shone with a new light as her mind began turning over plans. The redness on Lin Chuan's skin gradually faded. A crisp, snapping sound came from his body as the intense, scorching energy fully merged with his soul power. Xiao Wu, seeing this, knew he had completed the absorption. She hurriedly urged, Xiao Chuan is waking up. Ming, hurry back and report to Da Ming for me. Though reluctant, the Titan giant ape nodded, got up, and bounded off. After the incense burned down, Lin Chuan's appearance returned to normal. The soul power inside him settled. He opened his eyes to find Xiao Wu watching him with an expression somewhere between annoyance and curiosity. Xiao Chuan, you're finally awake. I was bored, she said. Grinning, Lin Chuan felt the thrill of success. Thanks for protecting me, Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu waved him off as if it were nothing. Don't mention it. We're friends. Friends? Lin Chuan's eyes flickered, but he held his tongue. Let's not talk about that. What soul skill did I get? She leaned closer, curious. Lin Chuan didn't hide it. He released his martial soul with a surge of spirit, drew an arrow from his quiver, set it on his bow, and let the string snap back. The yellow soul ring glowed at his back. The arrow on the bow burst into flame. The tip burned with a dazzling red light. He released his fingers. Swish! The arrow flew true and struck a 3-meter-wide tree trunk. With a tremendous bang, the trunk split in half and exploded outward. Flames leapt from the impact, spreading to nearby grass and trees. A system-like message seemed to ring in the air. You seriously used a soul skill and gained something. Explosive arrow proficiency +1, archery proficiency +1. Xiao Wu stared, mouth slightly open. This is incredible. Elemental attacks. This is my first soul skill, Lin Chuan explained, still breathing a little hard. Explosive arrow. It fires an arrow imbued with flame. When it hits an enemy or an obstacle, it explodes and deals fire damage to targets within range. The description sounded simple, but the effect was impressive. Lin Chuan didn't say everything. Because the soul skill came from the Earth King, it had inherited the innate spirit's growth trait. The power of a first soul skill could increase along with the user's soul power. Its base strength would also rise. In other words, if the skill's basic power was X at soul power level 10, then when soul power reached level 11, its basic power would increase proportionally, so the soul skill itself grows as the wielder's soul deepens. Other martial spirits could have similar growth traits. For example, the famed 7 Treasures Glazed Pagoda's skill amplification increases with each additional soul ring. Regardless, choosing the Earth King for his first soul ring proved to be an excellent decision. Not only had Lin Chuan gained a growing soul skill, but his soul power had also surged from level 16 to level 18, a 2-level leap thanks to that 100-year-plus soul ring. He had thought the Earth King might be around 500 years old, but after absorbing it, he realized it was older, at least 600, possibly approaching 700 years, hence the unusually large boost. Lin Chuan's new status registered in his mind as if on a scroll. Name: Lin Chuan Soul Power, level 18, First Ring Soul Master. Blessing: Heaven rewards hard work. Blue Star's will. Effort will always be rewarded. Skill: Soul Meditation, level 3, 351 1000. Skills: Archery, Basic, 327 10,000. Spearmanship, basic, 513 1000. Sword skill, basic, 475 10,000. Boxing, basic, 533,000. Body skill, basic, 133 10,000. Seeing and feeling domineering LV1, 342,000. Soul skill, first soul skill, explosive arrow level 1. After just one soul hunt, many of his proficiencies had jumped. Clearly, experience in the wild yielded far faster progress than training in isolation. Lin Chuan wondered aloud, so soul skills have proficiency levels too. I wonder, does higher proficiency mean the skill's effects improve, or does higher soul power increase the skill's damage? Maybe both? He looked at Xiao Wu with an excited, expectant expression. This trip into the Douluo Forest had been a complete success, except for one thing. He still needed 2 more levels to break through to level 20. If he had reached 20, he could have tried for a second soul ring before leaving. But that was wishful thinking. He couldn't afford to stay in Douluo Forest much longer. He'd been lucky this time to meet the Earth King. Luck might not favor him again. "Xiao Wu, let's go," he said, filled with energy and anticipation. "Ah, are we going back already?" Xiao Wu pouted, clearly reluctant. The return trip had been hard and bumpy for days, and they'd only just arrived half a day ago. Leaving so soon felt unbearable. To her surprise, Lin Chuan shook his head. "I'm not going back to Notting College." "What?" Xiao Wu's anxiety spiked. "Why not? The reason I came to Notting was to learn soul power cultivation and study soul beasts. Now that I've accomplished that, there's no need to stay." "You want me to go back alone?" she added, voice edging toward indignation. If she'd known she wouldn't be going with him, she never would have followed. Lin Chuan's expression stayed level. "Actually, I think you shouldn't go back. You should stay in the Xingdou Great Forest." Those plain words hit like a thunderclap. Xiao Wu's face drained of color. Her pupils shrank. She forced a smile, shaky. "Xiao Chuan, what are you talking about? The Xingdou Great Forest is dangerous. How could I stay there? Isn't it your home?" Lin Chuan asked, his tone sharper now. Xiao Wu was speechless. The firmness in his voice made it clear. Her secret had been discovered. No amount of arguing would sway him now. "How did you find out?" she demanded. "Didn't you hear what I said to Erming earlier?" Lin Chuan shook his head, calm. "I actually knew your true identity from the start. You're a 100,000-year-old soft-bone rabbit from the Xingdou Great Forest. I have to say, brave choice to run all the way to Notting City." "How? How did you know?" Xiao Wu took an involuntary step back, startled, but curiosity burned under her panic. "That's my secret. I can't tell you. Since you helped cover me earlier, you should just leave." Lin Chuan shrugged, a hint of a smile on his lips. "Maybe it's because we're friends. Or maybe it's because Tang Hao, Tang San's father, a titled Douluo from the Haoqian sect, has already found out about you. Otherwise, why do you think I ran off? Tang San's father is a titled Douluo." The news hit her like ice. Her face went even paler. So someone had discovered her identity, but had not killed her. Could he be saving her for Tang San? Panic and 100 other possibilities swirled in her head. She had deliberately enrolled at a remote school to avoid encountering Soul Douluo and titled Douluo, and now she'd run straight into one. Fear gnawed at her throat. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Suspicion threaded through her voice. Lin Chuan's smile widened, but his tone grew serious. "Why am I telling you? Maybe because we're friends. Maybe because I don't want to see a 100,000-year spirit bone treated cheaply. But I won't lie, the temptation must be enormous. A 100,000-year spirit bone, especially from a transformed soul beast, is the prize of countless spirit masters. Not everyone would let you go." Xiao Wu's lips pursed. "Are you afraid I'll disappear if you tell people about me?" "This doesn't concern you," she went on, confused and wary. "I have my own plans." Lin Chuan waved a hand, not wanting to argue. "One last thing before we part. You'd better stay in the Xingdou Great Forest and cultivate until you're mature before you come back into the human world to avenge your family. A 100,000-year spirit beast is too tempting. Not everyone is as merciful as I am." Xiao Wu opened her mouth, but no retort came. At that moment, the ground trembled. Birds erupted from the trees in a frantic flurry, and Lin Chuan's eyes narrowed. "Someone's looking for you. I'm leaving. Don't let anything happen to you." Good luck, Xiao Wu. I hope we'll meet again, he added, then turned and disappeared into the jungle in a blur. Xiao Wu watched him go, emotions tangled. Moments later, a crash of foliage announced the arrival of the Titan ape that had been following them. It hadn't gone far. At her call, it bounded back over and breathed a relieved sigh on seeing her safe. Sister Xiao Wu, are you all right? It asked. I'm fine, Erming, she replied softly. But my identity's been exposed. I'll have to stay with you in damning for now. What? Erming's eyes widened until they looked like lanterns, flames of rage flaring. I'll kill that human. No, it wasn't him who exposed me. Xiao Wu hurried to calm the ape. A titled Douluo at the academy found out. Xiao Chuan told me and brought me back. If the Titan ape had rushed out in a blind fury, it would have caused a scene, and 100,000-year spirit beast, despite its power, could be overcome by a high-level Douluo or several titled Douluo working together. It was far safer to stay hidden. Come on, Erming, let's go back. All right, Sister Xiao Wu. Erming brightened at having her stay. He bent down, letting her settle on his shoulders, and they plunged deeper into the forest. Outside the boundaries of the Stardow forest, Lin Chuan slowed, listening. He felt relieved that no one, at least for now, was trailing him. He had chosen to confront the situation because Tang Hao had discovered Xiao Wu but had not acted immediately. That suggested Tang Hao intended to exploit the opportunity. He might cultivate Tang San's soul power to the highest possible level, perhaps until it reached 90, and then take the 100,000-year beast. Human nature made such a plan plausible. Initially, Lin Chuan had planned to keep his head down and wait for a chance to leave quietly. But as the interference behind the scenes grew bolder, he grew increasingly uneasy. If things continued, Tang Hao might do something ruthless, and someone could be silenced. He had thought to use Tang Hao's absence to run, but now Xiao Wu had followed him. Better, he decided, to create a distraction. Tang Hao was clearly after the 100,000-year rogue rabbit. Lin Chuan tightened his jaw. If Tang Hao wanted the rabbit, he'd go to the Stardew Forest and cause trouble there, see what kind of game Tang Hao was playing, and make sure Xiao Wu wouldn't be taken so easily. Chapter 14. The Junior Soul Master Academy wasn't strict. Its graduation requirement was simple. As long as you formed a soul ring within 6 years of enrollment, you could graduate. For Lin Chuan, who had already squeezed nearly all he could out of Nodding Academy, there was little point in staying. An advanced Soul Master Academy could offer better simulated training environments and faster growth of soul power. Even with soul refinement techniques that could draw on the essence of heaven and earth, speed mattered. So Lin Chuan wanted to get stronger faster, but he hadn't decided which advanced academy to try for. He was just a civilian with no connections. Breaking into one of those schools without making a scene would be difficult. An 18-year-old, one-ring soul master, if word got out, would attract every faction looking for prodigies. Lin Chuan had no intention of advertising his strength. For now, his plan was simple. Raise his soul power, fight for a second soul ring, upgrade all his skills, and then think about the rest. Travel and training at the same time. Nodding City, Junior Soul Master Academy, midnight. Half the holiday had already passed, and most students had gone home. Only a handful remained on campus. The once lively academy was unusually quiet. In a small room, Yu Xiaogang sat cross-legged with his eyes closed, trying to force his soul power to advance. Half an hour later, he opened his eyes in frustration. No progress. His soul power was stuck at level 29. It's useless, he muttered, clenching his fists. No matter how I practice, I can't break 30. It's so unfair. Yu Xiaogang's face darkened. He had studied theory until he could rival the continent's best, but a congenital defect seemed to be holding him back. He could write theses and teach circles full of students, but without that breakthrough, he felt like a failure. Outwardly, people treated him with respect because of his status. Privately, he was certain they'd sneer. The thought made his expression sour momentarily before he composed himself. It doesn't matter, he said aloud, forcing a small smile. Xiao-san is here now. He'll prove my theory right. Then those fools will know whose theory really matters. He thought about Tang San, how under his guidance the boy might one day achieve the perfect spirit ring configuration and become a titled Douluo of unimaginable power. The idea filled him with hot anticipation. He was just getting carried away when a sudden knock at the door cut off his reverie. Bang! 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 Yu Xiaogang smoothed his face back into impassivity and called out, "The door's unlocked. Come in." The door creaked open, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped in. His robe was tattered, hair and beard unkempt. The whole figure looked disheveled. Yet his eyes were sharp, each step heavy enough to make the floorboards complain. "Master," the man said in a deep voice, "it's been many years." The man pulled back his hood. Yu Xiaogang's composure slipped. Recognition, surprise, a shock of rare excitement flashed across his usually impassive face. "Hao Tian Douluo?" he whispered. "It's me," the man replied with a tired smile. "I didn't think you'd recognize me like this." Yu Xiaogang's voice trembled. I guessed it might be you. Xiao-san's father is really you, but how did you end up like this?" Seeing his question stirred something in Tang Hao. For a moment his eyes clouded with sorrow, then a chilling murderous intent flared up and radiated outward. The pressure was brutal. Yu Xiaogang actually trembled and fear threatened to overtake him. Tang Hao's control was the only thing keeping him from snapping. "This is old business," Tang Hao said, voice low. "Not something to talk about now. I came for something else." "What is it?" Yu asked, recovering his composure. Tang Hao sat down opposite him. "I have to leave for a while. There are things I must do. I'm asking you to take care of Xiao-san." "Leave? Where are you going?" Yu Xiaogang frowned. "Xiao-san is only 7. He's your son. Are you really going to leave him here alone?" Tang Hao's gaze hardened. His aura tightened like a drawn bow. "That's not for you to decide. Xiao-san is my son, and this path is something he chose. Some things he must bear for himself. Others cannot shoulder them for him." He said it coldly, almost as if stating a fact rather than pleading. Yu Xiaogang breathed deep, trying to steady his emotions. "I understand," he said finally. "Don't worry. Xiao-san is my disciple now. I'll take care of him. But remember, he's your son." "You don't have to remind me," Tang Hao replied quietly. "He will always be my son." With that, he reached into his robe and let a small black token fall onto the table between them. "Xiao-san is in your hands." Then Tang Hao drew his hood up and left as silently as he'd come. Yu stared at the black token and sighed. He had 1,000 questions, but for the moment, he could only hold the token and wonder. After the encounter, Tang Hao melted into the night and hid in the shadows outside Notting College. He moved quickly toward the 7th dormitory, pushed the door open, and found it empty. Damn it, where did they go? Tang Hao's face went hard. He had only been away a few days. Someone had slipped away in that short time. Too careless. He glared into the dark, then turned and vanished into the night. 2 days later, Barak Kingdom, Soto City. A lone figure stood outside the city's towering walls. It was Lin Chuan, fresh from the Stardew Great Forest. Soto City would be his first stop for formal training. He stared up at the massive fortifications and couldn't help but marvel. The walls were taller and thicker than most cities he'd seen. In ordinary folks' eyes, a city like this was impregnable. Its scale eclipsed even some kingdom capitals. If this was a border city, Barak King's city, or the Tiando Empire's capital, only had to be more magnificent. "Tsk," Lin Chuan said with a smirk, glancing back at his hometown in his mind. "Nodding really is backward." He joined the line at the main gate with the rest of the arrivals, and after a short wait, was admitted. The gate guards barely glanced at him. It seemed there was no such thing as strict road passes on Douluo Continent. People moved freely between cities. For a world with so many powerful soul masters, trying to tightly control movement would only breed trouble. Better to let people pass through and save the resources for real threats. Chapter 15. Change of Plan. Make money first. Lin Chuan stepped into Soto City with a curious, hungry look. It was the first major city he'd reached after leaving Notting College, and everything felt new and overwhelming. The first order of business was obvious. Find a place to stay, he told himself. He eventually found a cheap inn, but even the cheapest room in a main city stung his wallet. Lin Chuan glared at the price list. If this kept up, he'd be living off breadcrumbs. He needed money, fast. As he went downstairs, he paused at the reception desk. The clerk was busy, so Lin Chuan set 5 copper soul coins on the counter without hesitation. The change in the man's expression was immediate. The bland indifference vanished, and a flattering smile spread across his face. "Good evening, sir. How can I help?" the receptionist asked. "This is my first time in Soto City," Lin Chuan said. "Is there any kind of work I can do to earn money?" The question made the clerk hesitate. Then, seeing the coins, he leaned in. "Are you a soul master?" "Yes," Lin Chuan replied. The clerk's eyes brightened with envy. Even a one-ring soul master held a certain prestige. "You're young, full of potential. As for making money, Soto City has plenty of ways." He rattled off possibilities. You could fight in the soul fighting arena. Even in the lowest Iron Tier matches, a victory can earn you 10 gold soul coins. The downside is obvious. You can get hurt, and if you lose, you get nothing. There's also the Mercenary Tavern. Almost all kinds of soul masters gather there. Caravans come through and post escort jobs and other commissions. Pay can be generous, but it's dangerous. If you aren't strong enough, you could be badly injured, or worse. Lin Chuan left the hotel, 5 copper coins lighter but with useful intel. The arena sounded tempting, but he didn't even have the registration fee. 10 gold coins was a fortune to a newcomer. So his options narrowed. Find quick work at the Mercenary Tavern. The tavern was louder than the street outside. Pushing the wooden door open, Lin Chuan was hit by heat, smoke, and the smell of sweat. He weaved through the milling crowd to the bar and sat down. The bartender glanced over as he cleaned a mug. "What'll it be?" "I'm here to find work," Lin Chuan said. "I heard commissions are posted here." The bartender pointed to a crowded notice board. His tone was blunt, but not hostile, appropriate for strangers. Lin Chuan nodded and moved to the board. The wall was plastered with scraps of paper, caravan escorts, soul hunter assists, material searches, and notices about driving off rebellious soul beasts. Many postings had no pay listed, just a contact and a general description. Specific terms were to be discussed between client and soul master. The Mercenary Tavern was merely a marketplace. It took no responsibility for what followed. Lin Chuan scanned the options and selected an escort job. He copied the contact address and set off. After some searching in Soto City's maze of alleys, he found the caravan's rendezvous point. The caravan leader eyed him up and down, clearly taken aback by how young Lin Chuan looked. "You want to be an escort?" The leader asked, skeptical. "Are you a soul master?" "I am," Lin Chuan said. "I saw no level requirement, so I thought I'd try." The leader hesitated. "There's no level limit written, but how old are you, kid?" Lin Chuan didn't answer with words. He focused his soul power and summoned his martial soul, a short bow. Immediately, a pale glow circled his arm as his first spirit ring manifested. A century-old spirit ring cracked into being and hovered momentarily as it anchored to his soul. The caravan leader's expression flipped from doubt to stunned admiration. A first spirit ring with 100 years of aura, impressive for someone so young. "I was wrong," he admitted, bowing his head slightly. "I apologize. Little brother, if that's your strength, we'll be in good hands." He named the terms quickly. 5 gold soul coins for the escort, assuming we encounter nothing dangerous. If trouble comes up, we'll renegotiate according to the situation. Is that acceptable? Lin Chuan asked only one question in return, where they were headed. "Not far, Sword City, in the Sylvis Kingdom," the caravan leader said. It wasn't a distant journey, and it skirted the Star Forest region. That settled it. The pay and the destination were both acceptable. Lin Chuan nodded. He felt a surge of relief. He'd secured work and his first decent payday. Chapter 16. You can't just set flags randomly before dawn the next morning. Lin Chuan was already awake. The earliest commissions were rare, and this one had come at just the right time. He couldn't afford to miss it. By the time he arrived at the rendezvous just outside Soto City, the caravan was already assembled. Rows of wagons, piled high with goods, lined one side of the road. The caravan leader from the day before was checking the manifests and counting people. "Soulmaster Lin, good timing. You'll be on guard duty for 2 of the wagons," the leader said with a friendly smile as he assigned positions. Lin Chuan nodded and took his post. With things settled, he had time to take stock. Using his observational sense, he quietly surveyed the escort. 8 soulmasters in total, himself included, 1 3-ring master, 5 2-ring masters, and 2 1-ring masters. Whoever had hired this escort hadn't skimped on pay. "All right, everyone," the leader announced. "Once everyone's here, let's move out." The caravan set off, heading across the grass seas of the Lima Plain, skirting the Jianshan Mountains, and then out of the Barak Kingdom toward the Sylves Kingdom. On the surface, the route seemed safe, but soul beasts were not exclusive to the soul beast forest. The Lima Plain was fertile ground for many creatures. The Tiando Empire had sent sweeps through the area in the past, and the most dangerous beasts had been killed or driven into the forest, but what remained were mostly low-level soul beasts: rabbits, hedgehogs, snakes. Anything approaching a century in age was already rare. Still, even a 10-year soul beast could be dangerous to ordinary people, so the escort had been hired. Knowing most of the beasts left were weak, relaxed Lin Chuan somewhat. He settled into the moving wagon and practiced. While the caravan pressed on, he meditated to cultivate his soul power. When they stopped to rest, he drew his sword and drilled his forms. A group of mercenaries nearby chewed on jerky and watched him. "That kid works harder than anyone," one said. "I heard from the caravan head that his first soul ring is 100 years old," another added in awe. "For someone who's only got one ring, that's incredible. You reckon he's even younger than most of us," someone else muttered. "If he keeps at it, he'll go far. The rest of us, we just keep scraping by." Even the three-ring soul master, who mostly kept to himself, couldn't help but glance over with a look of approval as Lin Chuan practiced. The chatter didn't bother Lin Chuan. He was completely absorbed in his own training. You take sword practice seriously once, swordsmanship proficiency. You meditate seriously once, soul power slightly improved, meditation proficiency. The tiny numbers that popped into his mind always felt like encouragement. Soto City faded behind them, and the landscape opened into endless rolling plains. Waist-high grasses swayed in waves, and the air smelled of green growth. The caravan leader, more serious now, called over the guards. "Everyone, stay alert. Soul beasts can appear at any time. Once we clear the Lima Plain and approach the Jianshan Range, we can relax a little." A middle-aged soul master chuckled confidently. "Don't worry, Supervisor. With us here, any soul beasts that show up won't be walking away." "Exactly," the others echoed. Lin Chuan said nothing out loud, but scanned the tall grass with his senses. The terrain reminded him of the Qingdao Great Forest, short sight lines and plenty of places for beasts to hide. With so many wagons and people clustered together, they'd be difficult to move and even harder to escape if a large pack attacked. He exhaled. "I hope nothing happens," he muttered to himself. Flag set, he thought, an old superstition that always made him chuckle, but the words were barely out of his mouth when a ripple of tension ran through the guards. "Something's moving," the middle-aged soul master snapped. "Stop." The caravan ground to a halt. All eyes swept the roadside. Not far off, the bushes trembled and a scatter of dim, eerie lights zipped through the undergrowth. Soul beast senses flickering. "There!" someone shouted. The bushes parted and figures flowed out. A pack of wolves, at least 50 in number. Most were about 1.6 meters long with iron-gray hides. They advanced in a slow, encircling line. Two of them loomed much larger, nearly 2 meters, with long saber-like fangs glinting. "Nether wolves," one of the guards cursed. "Damn it! There are at least two 200-year wolves among them." The middle-aged soul master's face went hard. Nether wolves were social beasts, usually moving in small packs. A pack this large, and with elder specimens, was bad news. Even if only 2 were centuries old, the way they compensated with numbers made them a dangerous force. "Protect the wagons," the caravan leader barked. He had hoped the trip would go smoothly. Now he was already imagining losses. "Master Soul Masters, do your best. If you repel them and keep the goods safe, we'll make the reward worth your trouble." "No problem," the middle-aged soul master said, stepping forward calmly. "It's a wolf pack, controllable." His confidence steadied the others. They calmed the horses and formed defensive positions around the wagons. The middle-aged soul master quickly organized the response. "I'll take one of the big wolves. 3 of the great soul masters, you 2 and you, handle the other big one. The remaining 2 great soul masters will deal with the bulk of the pack. You 2 one-ring masters, hold the line and protect the vehicles." No one objected to the assignment. Lin Chuan, however, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. His perception caught something the others didn't. A pair of presences hidden and waiting. They were masked by undergrowth and cunningly concealed. One radiated the power of a 600-year-old soul beast. The other was far older, a full 1,000 years. Lin Chuan's expression tightened. The wolf pack before them wasn't what it seemed. What the guards could see were wolves and a couple of elders. What they couldn't see were two predators concealed and patient, reserves waiting for the right moment. The plan the middle-aged soul master had laid out would not be enough if those two revealed themselves. He spoke up then, voice steady but urgent. There's more than what you see. Two more wolves, much older, are hidden. One's about 600 years, the other close to 1,000. Silence dropped over the caravan like a shadow. The wagons, the guards, the horses, everything held a breath. What had begun as a routine escort had just become a gamble none of them had expected. Chapter 17, Middle-Aged Soulmaster. Ah, me? Tsk, this is worse than I thought. Lin Chuan glanced around, frowning. The others didn't seem to sense the danger lurking in the dark. A pair of nether wolves, one several centuries old, the other a full millennium, was a terrifying prospect. The Millennium Netherwolf's cultivation was on par with a Soul Lord. Among the Soul Masters here, only a third-ringed cultivator might stand a chance, and even then, it would be a hard fight. Lin Chuan's eyes flicked to the middle-aged Soul Master. The man's martial spirit was bear-like, his 3 soul rings, white, and yellow, glowing faintly. But his soul power level was only 30. He was far from a match for the Millennium Beast. Lin Chuan sighed inwardly. His luck had run out. You'll have to rely on yourself from here on, he murmured. There were too many wolves for any single person to escape easily. The other Soul Masters were weaker, but they could at least share the workload. If the Millennium Netherwolf could be contained, the crisis might be manageable. Lin Chuan silently summoned his black short bow without saying a word. He was only a minor Soul Master. Telling the others might do more harm than good. It was better to keep the heavy cards hidden and act step by step. Ouch! At last the nether wolves surged forward. Kill everything in your way. The middle-aged Soul Master roared, charging into the pack first. Others followed. They had agreed on their roles before the ambush. Everyone knew their position. Lin Chuan stood by the caravan, a bow in one hand and a hatchet in the other. The wolves attacked in a dense tide, swarming over the line in an instant. One of the ghost wolves leapt, jaws dripping, aiming straight at Lin Chuan. Die! Lin Chuan's eyes flashed. He swung the hatchet without hesitation. It was only a 10-year-old nether wolf, a newborn by scales, but still a soul beast. The blade met bone and neck. The wolf's head came off in a single brutal stroke. Even a simple hatchet, once refined, was deadly. The other guards held well at first. The 200-year-old wolves were blocked, and most of the remainder were only decades old. But the caravan's protectors, excluding Lin Chuan, numbered just 2 high-ranked Soul Masters and 1 ordinary Soul Master. Killing each wolf steadily drained their soul power. As Lin Chuan had predicted, the tide began to turn against them. The defensive line frayed. Some wolves slipped past and attacked the wagon hands. Ah! Screams rose as several caravan members were ripped apart. Chaos swallowed the convoy. You beasts, die! The middle-aged Soul Master bellowed, eyes furious. He threw everything he had into a skill. The 3rd soul skill, Mighty Bear Paw. His yellow soul ring flared. A colossal paw slammed into the century-old wolf before him. The wolf did not dodge. It met the blow, and then, with a howl, snapped its teeth into the man's calf. Damn you, get off me! The Soul Master cursed, clutching his leg. He hadn't expected the wolf to resist his 3rd skill, and to bite fiercely in return. The exchange of injury left little benefit. Then, with a sharp rush, a black blur shot forward, so fast the naked eye couldn't follow, aiming straight for the middle-aged man. Damn! He scrambled to react. Even a weakened Soul Lord could dodge better than most, but his leg was already wounded. Lin Chuan had anticipated the move. He drew an arrow and loosed it at the thunderous shadow. The beast twisted to dodge the throat shot. The arrow missed its mark by a hair and buried itself in the left front leg. With a startled snarl, the shadow abandoned its attack and landed a short distance away. Only then did everyone see it clearly, a nearly 3-meter-long black wolf, claws and fangs glinting in the light. Millennium Nether Wolf, the middle-aged Soul Master gasped, horror draining the color from his face. No, this can't be. The caravan leader's voice trembled. Why are there still Millennium Beasts on Lima Plain? Doesn't the Balak Kingdom send Soul Masters to clear them every year? No one had an answer. The Millennium Nether Wolf did not attack at once. It turned its fierce gaze on Lin Chuan, low growls rolling from its chest, its aura climbing. It stared at the arrow lodged in its leg. Lin Chuan's jaw tightened. He could sense the beast's approach beforehand and had used the others as bait to create an opening. He had tried to strike decisively, but he had undershot the throat and hit the leg instead. Even so, crippling a front leg would cut its speed and power by at least half. That might be enough. Sk. I should have used an explosive arrow, he muttered under his breath. If he'd used it, the Millennium might have been seriously injured, but the blast could have harmed the wounded middle-aged Soul Master too. Lin Chuan couldn't bring himself to risk innocent lives. Even now, some lines were hardwired into him. He stepped forward, meeting the middle-aged man's wide-eyed stare. If you don't want to die, give it everything you've got. Hold this Millennium Wolf in place. I'll deal with the 200-year wolves first and then come back to help. The middle-aged Soul Master stared at him, speechless. Around them, blood and ash filled the air. The caravan's guardian looked at the massive black wolf and at his own bitten calf, then at Lin Chuan's steady, unblinking gaze. Ah, me! He blurted, stunned. Chapter 18, Killing the Wolf. The middle-aged Soul Lord watched with a wary expression. Lin Chuan rolled his eyes. You're the caravan's Soul Master, he said. If you won't step up, how am I supposed to do this alone? Don't worry, I'll handle it. Without giving the man a chance to reply, Lin Chuan spun and sprinted toward another ghost wolf he'd sensed, a beast whose cultivation registered at roughly 600 years. Not unbeatable by a seasoned great Soul Master, perhaps, but no match for him. The nether wolf lunged and let out a hurricane of a howl. Lin Chuan notched an arrow, and the yellow soul ring behind him flared. Explosive arrow! The shaft screamed through the air and struck true. The impact detonated in a thunderous blast. Flames spouted up, scorching the brush and engulfing several wolves. When the smoke cleared, the 600-year-old wolf lay on the ground, whimpering pitifully. Its fur burned away, its body badly singed. Die! Lin Chuan fired again, this time through the wolf's skull. As the beast fell silent, a dark yellow soul ring slowly coalesced in the air. The three great Soul Masters who'd been frozen into inaction finally snapped out of it and hurled themselves at the nearest remaining wolf. In short order, another pack member collapsed, torn apart by coordinated attacks. The Alpha, seeing his companions slaughtered so quickly, panicked. He let out a resonant roar and fled. Too late to run now. Lin Chuan snarled, drawing his bow once more. Explosive arrow! The arrow landed just ahead of the millennium-old Wolf King and detonated. The blast sent the Alpha flying. He slammed to the ground hard. Taking advantage of the opening, Lin Chuan loosed a second arrow that punched clean through the beast's throat. The 1,000-year-old wolf shrieked one last time and bled out. Seeing their leader dead, the remaining wolves lost heart. They turned tail and vanished into the wilderness. Only motionless carcasses littered the clearing, mute witnesses to the fight. We won? We won! The surviving mercenaries began to cry out, slowly coming out of shock. Relief and disbelief mixed on their faces as they looked skyward and shouted for joy at their survival. The middle-aged Soul Master collapsed to the ground, bruised and battered but alive. Pain twisted his features into a grim smile. He could hardly believe they'd survived an attack by a 1,000-year-old wolf pack. Lin Chuan exhaled deeply. The black short bow in his hands shimmered into blue motes and dissolved. Despite the chaos, the danger was over. The Wolf King had been killed, and the pack repelled. Master Lin, thank you for your help. If not for you, I don't think any of us would have survived, the caravan leader said, stepping forward with sincere gratitude. Entrusting Lin Chuan with the escort had proven to be the right choice. It's fine, Lin Chuan replied. I take money to deal with disasters. I did it for you, and for myself. If you died, I'd still have a pack to worry about. You are too modest. The caravan leader fumbled at his pocket and with great effort produced a small money bag. Please accept this, 10 gold soul coins, a small token of our gratitude. Lin Chuan's eyes lit up. He'd been short on funds. The original reward had only been 5 Gintama coins, a respectable amount, but nowhere near enough to cover the registration fee at the Grand Arena. 1 gold soul coin could be exchanged for 10 silver soul coins, or 10,000 copper soul coins. This new offer mattered. "How generous," Lin Chuan said, taking the bag. The caravan leader's smile grew wide. Lin Chuan's first soul ring, born of this fight, made him look like a prodigy in the eyes of the mercenaries. The leader hoped to cultivate a relationship with such a capable soul master. "Oh, and the materials from the 1,000-year-old wolf and the 600-year-old wolf. Those belong to you, of course," the leader added quickly. "If you'd rather not deal with the trouble of packing them up, sell them to us. I'll pay a fair price." "That'd be easier," Lin Chuan agreed. He welcomed the chance to rest. Under the leader's direction, the survivors began to clear the battlefield. The caravan had paid a heavy price. Several horses had been devoured, wagon goods lay scattered, and the human losses were severe. A great soul master and a soul master had been killed. Another great soul master had his arm broken, and many others bore wounds of varying severity. More than 10 caravan hands had died. The men and women who just fought for their lives moved with the hollow exhaustion of those who'd seen how quickly fortune could turn. Night fell. One by one, the fighters slumped against the wagons and slept where they could. Lin Chuan sat on the grass, the air smelling faintly of iron and ash, and looked up at the star-strewn sky. He felt a strange, sober melancholy settle over him. The strong prey upon the weak, danger lurked everywhere. This, he thought, was perhaps the true world of soul masters. For ordinary people, it was far less romantic than they imagined. Chapter 19, Sword City Great Fighting Arena, Jax. When the first ray of sunlight crested the mountain, the caravan was already packed and ready to move on. Even after tragedy, life goes on. Friends can die, survivors can grieve, but the road demands that you keep walking. The rest of the journey remained uneventful. Lin Chuan encountered a few soul beasts along the way, but they were weak and easily driven off. After more than half a month on the road, a vast city finally came into view, Sword City. It's finally here. Seeing the city rise from the plain like a great sleeping beast, the caravan relaxed. Faces that had been taut with tension softened into smiles. Lin Chuan felt it too, that steady relief of a job well completed. Escort commissions were never easy, long, exhausting trips where danger could appear at any moment. This assignment had been rough, but profitable. The pay was enough to ease his shoulders for a while. The Sylvis Kingdom, where they had traveled, lay in the southern reaches of the Tiando Empire. It bordered the Balak Kingdom and the Star Doe Forest, and its territory was larger than Balak's. Both kingdoms were under the Empire's umbrella, and Sword City sat near the border where Sylvis met Balak. As a convergence point for merchants from Wuhan City and Xingluo, where 4 trade routes intersected, Sword City's economy was booming. With the caravan's destination reached, the escort mission was officially complete. Despite a few bumps along the way, the reward remained intact. After collecting his pay, everyone went their separate ways. Lin Chuan declined the caravan leader's invitation to linger and slipped into the crowd alone. He checked the money bag in his hand, a few dozen gold soul coins. In addition to his pay, he'd sold materials from the nether wolf. The skin, teeth and bone of a 1,000-year nether wolf fetched good prices. The materials alone had brought in another 10 gold soul coins. Time for the next training plan, he thought, tucking the bag into his pocket and heading for the great soul fighting arena. Sword City, larger and more sophisticated than he'd imagined, housed a spirit hall and a massive fighting arena. It was the natural place for a soul cultivator to spend some time. First things first, find an inn, get a decent meal and a hot bath. After living rough for weeks, the warmth and comfort felt almost luxurious. Refreshed, he made his way to the arena as dusk fell. On the way, he stopped at a small shop and was drawn to a grimace mask on the shelf. He picked it up and tried it on. It covered his face without restricting sight or breath. He also bought a bamboo hat with a broad brim. It made him look a little like the hooded rogues from memory. Satisfied, he paid and slipped the mask and hat into his pack. The great soul fighting arena loomed, a 100-meter edifice brilliantly lit against the night. People flowed in and out of its gates. The place hummed with excitement. Lin Chuan put on the grimace mask, tilted the bamboo hat low, and merged with the crowd. At the registration counter, he announced himself. "Hello, "I'd like to register for soul fighting," he said. The clerk glanced up, unfazed by the mask, and smiled professionally. "Fill in your name, age, place of birth, and your martial spirit," he said. "Registration is 10 gold soul coins." Lin Chuan completed the form quickly. Instead of his real name, he put down a pseudonym, Jax, the weapons master. He knew he didn't really deserve the title, but he'd trained with 3 weapon types, and that was enough to justify the name for now. After a brief soul power test, the clerk handed him an iron fighting soul badge and informed him of his match placement. He'd been assigned to the 13th sub-arena. His opponent was a level 19 soul master with a record of 28 wins and 17 losses. The man had won 3 matches in a row. The odds panels showed roughly 1-3 against Lin Chuan. The arena allowed pre-match betting. There was a special section where spectators could place wagers before a match began. If you bet on the winner and your pick prevailed, the payout multiplied. It was a legal, regulated system, though Lin Chuan knew that regulated didn't always mean fair. The Great Soul Fighting Arena was backed by the 7 most prestigious Soul Master families on the continent, so it had weight and rules. Still, where money was involved, people cut corners. "Perfect timing to make some money," he murmured. Confident in his own abilities, he plunked down 20 gold soul coins, betting on his own victory. The fee had hurt, but the potential payoff and the thrill of it made it worthwhile. He returned to the 13th sub-arena and stood at the front row, an ideal spot to watch the action. The arena itself was broad, about 20 meters across, giving the fighters enough room to display their soul techniques. Despite its grandeur, attendance in the Soul Master mats was thinner than he expected. Only about 1/7 of the seats were filled. Many of the fights he watched were unremarkable, Soul Masters showing only a single soul skill, or fighters still at their first white soul ring level. The matches lacked spectacle, and Lin Chuan felt sleep creep up on him. Just as he was about to nod off, the announcer called his match. It was finally his turn. Chapter 20. Rising to Fame. The announcer stood in the center of the soul fighting stage, doing his best to stir the crowd. Next up is the 13th match of the arena, our 6th one-on-one fight. On the stage we have Yuan Tu, a veteran soul master who wields the beast spirit gopher, and Jax, the new combat soul master of the black feather bow. Will Yuan Tu extend his winning streak, or can the newcomer take the day? Let's bring them out. The host's voice echoed through the hall, and the stands answered. A chant for Yuan Tu rose up, rowdy and enthusiastic. Only a smattering of people called for Lin Chuan. He felt the familiar thrill of stepping into an arena. The lights made the whole platform seem like daylight, and cheers washed over him from every direction. For any man, that roar of approval is hard to resist. When Lin Chuan climbed onto the raised stage, his opponent came into view. Yuan Tu was short, but his expression was unpleasant, constantly darting eyes and a sinister leer. He spat a line of trash talk as he sized Lin Chuan up. "Well, look at you, a raw recruit. Lucky day for me. Boy, your fists and feet have no eyes. You want to avoid getting hurt? Give up now." Lin Chuan hadn't expected a pre-match lecture. He kept his face calm. "Nope, let's do this." Yuan Tu's grin turned cold. "Fine, let me teach you a lesson." He stamped his foot, releasing a surge of soul power. "Possess the martial spirit." In an instant, Yuan Tu's features shifted. Facial hair sprouted, his front teeth jutted out, and his nails lengthened into claws. He looked beast-like and obscene. Lin Chuan glanced at the white soul ring on Yuan Tu's arm. Whatever arrogance, Yuan Tu had evaporated in a second. Lin Chuan had expected something much more fearsome, maybe a decades-old soul ring. Instead, it was a first-level ring. "Don't say I didn't give you a chance," Yuan Tu snarled. "Show your martial spirit." Lin Chuan just shook his head, took the hatchet from his waist with a casual motion, and stood relaxed. "No need. This is enough." The sight of the hatchet cut the smirk from Yuan Tu's face and replaced it with rage. "You dare humiliate me?" Yuan Tu charged with a roar, claws extended. Lin Chuan didn't sidestep. He swung the hatchet. The white blade flashed, and the noisy arena fell into stunned silence. Yuan Tu only had time to register a blur of motion before the hatchet struck him full in the face. He became a shadow and flew backward, smashing into the wall in a spray of dust. For a moment, no one moved. Even the host was stunned. "What just happened?" "I can't tell. Jax just swung his weapon and Yuan Tu went flying. I didn't see any spirit skill. That couldn't have been a soul technique, right? Voices buzzed as people tried to make sense of it. The host gathered himself, hurried over to check on Yuan Tu, who lay unconscious with a swollen cheek. Then, returning to the microphone and barely hiding his excitement, he declared, "Unbelievable! Jax didn't even use his spirit. He beat Yuan Tu with just a hatchet. I declare the winner, Soul Master Jax." The match had ended so quickly it felt unreal. Lin Chuan tucked the hatchet away and walked off the platform, smirking. He was a little disappointed. He'd expected stronger opponents. If everyone here was that weak, then the arena wouldn't give him the kind of training he wanted. Money was one thing. He could earn plenty, but improving his combat experience and honing his skills was the real goal. Beating first-level soul masters without using any spirit techniques felt like punching children. It taught him nothing. "Tsk," he muttered under his breath. "Looks like I need to speed up my progress." He registered the match result, collected the reward for a successful fight, and got back the 10 gold soul coins he'd spent to enter. He also claimed the 59 gold and 4 silver he'd won betting on himself, though the Great Soul Fighting Arena took a 1% commission. A profit taker, but that was the house rule. Not much he could do about it. After that quick victory, Lin Chuan's nights filled with steady one-on-one matches. No opponent below level 20 could touch him, so he put away the hatchet and focused on practicing his unarmed combat and spear techniques during fights. He kept winning, but as his streak lengthened, the betting odds shrank and the money became negligible. What did grow, however, was his reputation. The name Jax started to spread through Sword City's arena scene. By day he trained. He meditated to cultivate soul power and drilled swordsmanship and archery. With no one spying on his methods, he could use the soul-refining rations in peace, though even the higher-grade meditation techniques couldn't fully absorb the energy of a soul-refining pill. Each dose still strained his meridians, so he limited himself to 1 pill every 5 days. Even so, the gains were impressive. His soul power rose faster now than it had when he was only a soul warrior. If this continued, breaking into level 20 and seeking a second soul ring wouldn't be long in coming. Leaving Notting College had been the right choice, after all.